Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Lance Secretan joining us. Lance, welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you, Michael.
So Lance, for those who don't know you, and some may not, although I'm sure many are familiar with you and your work, just take a moment and explain what you do.
Well, I am a consultant. I help organizations build inspiring cultures, and I coach leaders quite extensively, and I do quite a few keynote speeches during the course of the year. And I'm an author, so I've written 22 books.
You've had great success, clearly, in so many areas of life, and I want to explore as much as we can during the time that we have together today. You now consult and mentor globally with leaders. You've helped, from the last count that I saw, 6 companies reach Fortune's best companies to work for status. What steps did you take in your own marketing and the promotion of your business that you believe helped you the most to attract these world-class clients that you work with?
Well, I'm really ashamed to tell you that we don't do any marketing. We don't do any sort of print or advertising or anything like that. We don't do any email marketing. We rely entirely on word of mouth, and I focus exclusively really on 3 things. 1, doing the best possible work I can so that lots of other people talk about it and call us and say, hey, can you do that for us? That's absolutely my best marketing system. Writing is another very important one. There's no better business card than a book. So books have been very important to me in terms of generating new business. And then a keynote speech is also very important. In almost every speech I make, someone will come up to me afterwards, often more than one, and say, can we talk sometime in the future about you working with us? Because we really like to have these ideas in our company.
Love it. So that is so important. I think so often people are spending a lot of time thinking about marketing and what they can do to get the next client without recognizing that the next client is most often around them and comes from creating great value and results for those that you're already serving. But when you got started, word of mouth, I don't know if that played the role, but thinking back to the first client that you engaged with, how did you land them?
I can't even remember who my first client was because it's so long ago. But here's what happened. I helped to build a company, very successful organization called Manpower. And I was the CEO of Manpower Limited. We built it from scratch to 70,000 employees. And then I decided I would teach in the university. So I arrived in the university to teach MBA students leadership, which is really my field. And I found that the material being taught and the books and texts that were written were so awful and so different from anything I had been experiencing for the last 14 years that I wrote my own book. And that book became a bestseller. And at that point, I was faced with a conundrum because I couldn't handle my teaching load and also the requests from clients to come and work for them or speak with them and so on. So eventually I left the university and became a full-time consultant. And that book was really the beginning of it all.
Was that an easy decision for you to make, to go from the university world and that place of education to going out on your own and running now your own business? Because previously you were part of a larger organization while you were at the top. But what was that like for you?
Well, it's funny, and I don't think there's a recommended path that I could suggest here, but I'm a bit of a rebel, and I didn't enjoy working much in the university system. I loved teaching, and I loved the classes. I had a class of about 60 my first semester. I had the next semester, I think it was about 120 or so. The next semester it was 400. And at that point, we had 2 classrooms and closed circuit TV for the ones that I couldn't be with directly. And then they fired me. And they fired me because the faculty would sit down in meetings and say, who is this new guy that's draining all our students out of my classes? Let's get rid of him. So that gives you some sense of how the university system works. So I was actually quite glad when all that happened and thought this is probably going to be better for me.
It's interesting that you mentioned about having this ability to bring so many people into the classroom. I was on a call with a bunch of consulting clients just yesterday, and the topic of presentations came up and wondering what is the best approach to delivering a presentation that engages people. Clearly, this is what you were doing as a professor. So if you think about that time, What was it in your mind that really helped you to engage and to bring in so many students that were obviously very interested in what you were sharing?
Well, number one, I would say is do not use PowerPoint, because PowerPoint is now a sort of commodity item and people are tired of watching stickmen and bullet points. And I think that we have to find a different way. And the best way is still the old way, which is heart to heart. Yes, you've got data to speak about, and yes, you want content and you want material to be understood and learned and absorbed by students, but you've got to come from the heart. I think what we tend to do typically is we go head to head. My brain is going to connect with your brain. But that's not how it really works well. My heart needs to connect to your heart because the mind will only do what the heart tells it to.
Listening to this for the first time, and they recognize they've been leading with their head most often. They see the value in connecting with the heart. That just resonates with them. But how do they go about doing that? Are there certain words or an approach that someone who's not maybe familiar with going heart to heart can use to begin making some progress in that area?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One is, where do you start from? Do you start from you or do you start from the listener? If you start from you, and I think most people do, how can I be flashy? How can I be glamorous? How can I be clever? How can I be striking, etc.? All those kinds of things. How can I grab people's attention? Whereas if you start with the other end and start with the audience and say, what is the audience looking for right now? What would inspire them? What would make them feel better and have them feel more inspired now than when they first came here? I think that's one thing that we need to do. And I think the other thing that's important, I always get asked at the end of every speech that I make, how do you do what you do? Because I want to do what you do. Somebody will always say that to me. And I will say, well, what do you think I do? And they say, well, you make speeches all over the world and you stay in fancy hotels and you hang out with all the mucky mucks and so on. It's a pretty glamorous life. And I said, well, honestly, it's not. That's not what I do. What I do is I'm a teacher, and I teach in every conceivable way that I can, whether it's writing books, making speeches, consulting, running workshops, seminars, writing blogs, doing things on my web, instruments that we use for research, any of those things, interviews with the newspaper, whatever it takes, I'm teaching. And this is just one tiny piece of that.
I think that's powerful. You mentioned previously, Lance, that you were the president or CEO of Manpower Limited. You took it from scratch to 70,000 plus employees. That's obviously very significant growth. What are 2 to 3 steps that stand out in your mind that were pivotal, that were central to allowing the organization to grow that much, that even someone who is maybe an independent consultant or the owner of a small consulting firm and also wants to grow, what lessons could they maybe learn from your experience there?
Well, certainly relying on key people, hiring absolutely the best people you can to start with, and then relying on them. We simply couldn't have done this without a fantastic team that I'd gathered around me. They were simply amazing, and I relied on them totally for the things that they were good at. I deferred to them when they were responsible for things that they were better at than I am. And I asked them to defer to me on the things that I was better at than they were. And we worked that way as a team, and we were absolutely phenomenal. We were so strong that at times we would say, should we all just quit and go and start another company? That's what we were like. We're a bunch of brothers, although there was one of the key members was a very smart and terrific woman. But we saw ourselves as sort of a blood team, that was inseparable. Don't attack us because we're united. And we were just very, very hot, very good at what we did. And I think that relying on good people, but making sure you start with good people is really important. Starting with people, essentially, that you can't afford.
So for someone who's listening who says, yeah, I can't afford, or in their minds right now, they're saying it's a really scary proposition to go out and bring someone on because I don't know when my next large project is going to come and I don't want to promise someone that I can invest a certain amount into them without having that. And they see risk everywhere. What would you say to them?
Well, of course it's scary. I mean, if you want to do it safely, it's not going to work. The only way to move forward is to be scary, is to take risks, is to be bold, is to be ambitious. There isn't any other way. If you just want to be milquetoast, then fine, but you're not going to get anywhere doing that. So, yeah, of course, you have to take risks. And when it comes to talking to people you can't afford, and I certainly hired a lot of people, terrific people from large corporations, and we were nothing. We were just starting. So they were taking a big hit coming to work with us. It was all about passion and all about sharing in the spoils. So yes, it's going to be painful in the short term. You're going to make less money here than you are right now where you are. But in the future, if we pull this off, you're going to make a lot more. And that was really the pull. I always remember the famous comment that Steve Jobs made to John Sculley when John Sculley was at PepsiCo and Steve Jobs was recruiting him as a CEO of Apple. And Sculley turned him down. And Steve Jobs said to Sculley, you could spend the rest of your life selling sugared water, or you could come and join Apple and change the world. Mm-hmm. That's the framework.
Lance, the focus of much of your work is on leadership, right? Your recent book, The Bellwether Effect, is on leadership. Yet there's so many consultants and firms who say they specialize in leadership. You clearly do, and you've been very successful at it. But how do you create differentiation and an advantage so that buyers and those in the marketplace really want to work with you and your firm over others? While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early-stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early-stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months. So don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
Well, I've got bad news for people who specialize in leadership. I don't think that's going to work. And the reason I don't think it's going to work is that we spend about $170 billion a year on leadership development in North America. There are 200,000 books on leadership on Amazon.com. Every university, business school is marketing some kind of leadership program. There are consultants from coast to coast marketing and selling leadership. And think about it. Leadership is broken everywhere, whether it's Washington, Ottawa, healthcare, corporate America, the police, the Roman Catholic Church, the home, you name it. There's no place you can point to where we have successfully pulled off the whole idea of leadership. Therefore, you have to come to a conclusion in the end that everything we've been doing so far, and it's about a 40-year journey we've been on, the creation of the leadership industry, as it were, has arrived at this place where, let me tell you this statistic, every time I make a speech, I ask this question of the audience. How many people do you think would give up their professional career if they had a free hand and a free choice? And I start by saying, do you think it's 50%? And immediately somebody will say, no, it's 60%. And then somebody will say, no, it's 70%. Then somebody says 80%. And that's where we always end, Michael. 80% of the population wouldn't go to work tomorrow morning if they didn't have to. That's a tragedy. If that's the sum result of what we've built and done together, all of us that are in the leadership business, then we should be ashamed of ourselves. So where I've arrived, this conclusion came to me a long time ago, is that we're not looking for leadership. We're looking for inspiration. And that's a whole different subject. What people are really yearning for is to be inspired everywhere. They want to be inspired at home. They want to be inspired at their church, in healthcare, at their work, and their jobs, with their friends. They want to be inspired by movies and restaurants and service companies. Everywhere in life, they're looking to be inspired. And by the way, that's not motivated. That's a different thing. Motivation is fear-based. Inspiration is love-based. So if you can put together a way of becoming inspired and then inspiring others and then inspiring the world, that's, for instance, one of my books is called The Spark, the Flame, and the Torch. That's exactly what it describes. The spark is how to become inspired ourselves, because you can't inspire other people if you're not inspired. And then once we become inspired, the spark, we're able to move to the flame, which is how we inspire other people. And then finally, once we're inspiring other people, we can inspire the world. So that's how we differentiate in my business. I'm not saying it's the only way, and I'm not saying it's just the right way, but it's the way that's worked for us.
No, I mean, I think that is extremely powerful and very compelling. I'd love to challenge you a little bit on that to just become a little bit more tactical for our listeners. So for those who are and have embraced leadership and have used that in their language when describing themselves as leadership consultants or working in the leadership space, what could they do with that? If they're also resonating with what you just shared, which is very powerful, would you suggest that they start talking about, like not using the word leadership anymore, even though the marketplace, most likely the buyers out there are still thinking in terms of leadership, whether or not that is right or wrong? So what kind of more specific advice might you offer to people?
Well, let me be a shameless promoter now. I would say that one of the ways would be to come and study with us. We run a 3-day certification program where we teach everything that I've developed over the last 40 years to consultants and give them all the tools, access to everything we have in our bag of tricks and our website, and help them as much as we can in accelerating their careers. So we do this several times a year. We ran about 10 of these last year, and they've been very successful. But that would be one way, because I think we've got a format that really works well. Clients seem to love the work that we're doing, and I think it's wonderful if other people will do it too.
So I think, this topic of leadership is broken. I want to ask you about that, and you've already talked a lot about that. But I think one thing that's also, and this maybe ties directly to what you just mentioned, Lance, but it's an opportunity for me to get your position on this. And so selfishly, I'm interested. We talk a lot about leadership, and to many people, that means leading others. Yet what we don't talk very much about is leadership of self. And many people aren't getting the results they want in their own lives. They aren't feeling fulfilled. They're not energized. They're not motivated or inspired, as you might say. They're also not committed. What would you advise for those people to do that have great potential within themselves, but in their own lives right now, they're not getting the results that they want, or they're not feeling that sense of energy and motivation as well? What might you offer to them? What suggestions could you share from your own experience?
I think you've got to do whatever it is you love doing. Passion for work, and that's so important. I think you can tell the passion, you can hear it in my voice. I'm passionate about the work that I do. There's nothing that makes me as excited as watching a large company like, let's say, Microsoft, which is a wonderful client of ours, transform from a whacked out, lost their way organization to one of the preeminent organizations on the planet today, 28th biggest company in America. And they have switched their whole approach to how they lead and how they manage in such a way that Satya Nadella, the CEO, has added over $300 billion to the value of the company in the 3 years that he's been there. That's the exciting part of passion. But that only comes from the fact that we do what we do here because I love what I do, and I will do it until I drop. And I'm already 15 years past retirement age, and I'll probably be 20 or 30 years past retirement age or more before I'm done.
Right. Great advice. Lance, you write, you speak, you coach, you consult. You offer several different programs, one that you just talked about before. How do you keep all this organized? Because clearly you're also very focused on lifestyle and enjoying life and being healthy in terms of exercise and all of that lifestyle. But you offer, like when I went to your website, I saw there's just so many different offerings and so many different books and programs. How do you manage all of that?
Well, a good EA helps. And I have a wonderful lady that's worked for me for 16 years. Her name is Tricia Field, and I love her, and she's wonderful. And I rely on her enormously for keeping me organized. Otherwise, I'd be a mess. And that's not my strength either. So I need someone to keep me on the airplane and at the right time and showing up at the right meetings with the right stuff and so on.
From a strategic point of view, you could have just written your books and may put out one specific program for one specific type of client. but clearly you've developed many different programs for many different sizes of clients, from individuals all the way up to companies like Microsoft. Why do that? Why create, as some people might see it, as more complexity or more variables in the business and not keep it very, very focused with just one or two specific offerings?
Well, I think it's more about, again, the other person, not about me. I could just satisfy myself by only offering one or two different things, but that's not what clients need. Clients basically have driven my business. Somebody will say to me, well, I'd like to reinvent my brand. Well, I don't know a whole lot about that. I've got to study quickly and see what we already have in our toolkit that would help there, and then learn the rest. But then that puts me into the business of doing odd things for clients that I had never done before. I mean, another example I can tell you, and this is completely in left field, but we publish a lot of books. And one of the things I learned about publishing is that originally I was publishing with big name publishers, but they are really hopeless in the long term in terms of marketing and keeping energy behind your book, because after 90 days, there are new books and your book is history. So over the years, I bought the rights back to all my books. And now I have all books, except for one, under my brand. And what I now have found is that other people have called me and said, could you help me with my book? Well, we now publish books for other people. And we know everything that you can think of that's necessary for books. One of the things about books is the same as I said earlier about people. Self-publishing is a messy and honestly a low-level business. Self-published books look like they're self-published. They shouldn't. They should look like they're published by a New York publishing house. And we know how to do that. So we help people with editing, with titles, with finding ISBN numbers, with filing with Library and Congress or wherever, design, the printing, launching it, etc. So all those things are part of what we offer. Now, I never saw myself as a book publishing consultant. That's not my wheelhouse. But it's something we've done a lot of, and people have asked us for it. So we've created a whole business around that for them.
Have you ever had a request for something like that you turned down?
No, not really. I've had requests, though, from companies that I won't work with, like tobacco companies, for example, because we have a belief in our organization that we will only work with life-affirming organizations. So when companies call us and say, hey, we're a gun maker, we'd like you to work for us, I say, no, thank you. That's just not something I'm going to be doing. Mm-hmm. What we do is we help companies do what they do much better than they would have done otherwise. So if you are in the business of killing people, I'm not going to help you be better at that.
Makes a lot of sense. Lance, thank you so much for coming on, sharing some of your wisdom, advice, and experience with us and giving us a taste of your journey here. Again, thank you for your time.
Been good to be with you, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.